Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into another collection of true terrifying stories pulled straight from YouTube comments. Let's dive in. A few years ago, I stayed over at my friend's place. She and her little sister rented a room in a big, old apartment. I wasn't a fan of cats back then, but their landlord had one. That night, we stayed up late, and before going to bed, I made sure to close the door to the room because I didn't want the cat coming in. I slept on the side where my friend's sister usually slept, with the door about 1.5 meters away from me. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of the door creaking open. I couldn't see anything because of my poor eyesight, but I heard the soft padding of paws on the floor. It was the cat. I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep. Suddenly, the cat jumped onto the edge of the bed, near my feet. I was startled, but I tried to stay calm. Then, something fell next to me. It wasn't the cat. I was terrified, but I didn't open my eyes. I crossed my arms over my chest and began nudging my friend to wake up. But she wouldn't stir, no matter how much I scratched at her. I could feel a presence beside me. Then came the silence, followed by a whisper in my ear. "Look at me." My heart raced and panic started to grip me. I desperately tried to wake my friend, but I couldn't speak. Although my friend was on the left side of the bed, I kept scratching her with my right hand because I was clutching my chest with my arms crossed. Suddenly, the thing next to me took my left hand and placed it on its face. I could feel a child's soft, small face under my palm. Then the voice whispered again, "Look at me." The fear was overwhelming. My right hand kept trying to wake my friend, but the other hand stayed on the child's cheek. The child pressed my finger against its eye, pushing so hard that my nail pierced its skin. I could feel my finger become wet, like it was in the child's eye. The child repeated, "Look at me." I turned my face toward my friend, squeezed my eyes shut, and tried harder to wake her up. At some point, the fear became too much, and I woke up, really woke up. No one was there. I breathed a sigh of relief and tried to go back to sleep. But then, the door creaked again. I heard tiny paws, and something jumped onto the bed again. I knew the nightmare was repeating. I turned toward my friend's side of the bed, and something fell again. I jumped up, terrified. It was daytime now. The room was bright, the door was closed, and my friend woke up when I startled her. I told her what had happened, and she was just as scared as I was. For a week after that, I couldn't sleep. Every time I laid down, I felt a presence on my right side, and I kept feeling like my finger was still wet. When I told my mom about it, she said something similar had happened to her as a child. She explained that sometimes certain places or people have a protector, an entity that watches over them. In my friend's sister's case, there might have been such a guardian. It never came to her, but if anyone else slept in her spot, it would show itself. We live in Yakutia, in a private house on the outskirts of the city. The house isn't ours. It belongs to my wife's parents, who work on rotation in a remote ulos. What I'm about to tell you happened in that very house. It was late at night. My wife, our little one, and I were all asleep in bed. In the middle of the night, through the haze of sleep, I heard something near the front door. I lifted my head to listen, and I saw my wife stir, as if she had heard it too. I knew I wasn't imagining it. I quietly got up, trying not to wake them, and started moving towards the entrance. I could hear my wife's breathing slowing, realizing she was still awake, but trying to stay calm. I moved carefully, making sure not to make a sound. When I reached the door leading to the hallway, I noticed it was slightly ajar. As I reached for the handle, the door slammed shut. Cold fear hit me, running from my head to my feet. I stood there for what felt like 5 seconds, my mind racing. It's better to let them, or it, leave than risk a fight I might lose and put my family in danger. I opened the door, flicked on the light, and saw snow tracks on the floor. I rushed to check at the entrance. The door was locked. I thought, if someone is here, they must be in the boiler room. Grabbing a hammer, I entered the boiler room, but there was no one. It all happened so fast, maybe a minute or so. I searched the whole house. Nothing. I returned to the bedroom, walked over to my wife, and with a calm voice said, "Must have been a draft." I acted like I'd fallen back asleep. She trusted me, so she relaxed and fell asleep again. But I waited until she was fully out. Then I sat on the couch with the hammer, keeping watch all night. Nothing happened, but even then, the feeling of being watched never left me. I felt that presence, whatever it was, until morning. I've always been haunted by nightmares, and I've learned to live with them, but this time, it was different. It was truly terrifying. It happened near dawn. I woke up suddenly, feeling like someone was watching me. My dog was barking madly outside, and I could feel my heart pounding. I was lying with my back to the room, facing the wall. I decided to turn around, and what I saw nearly froze me. There, right in front of my eyes, sat the silhouette of a man. He looked like a warrior, his outline sharp and clear. His armor was ancient, with spiked shoulders like epaulets, and in his hand he held a spear. He was just a shadow, but I knew this was a warrior. I was paralyzed. My mind screamed, "Not again! Not another paralysis!" But then I realized something. I could move. I stared harder. I saw it. His chest rising and falling. He was breathing. Not a ghost, not a figment. He was alive. My dog continued barking furiously outside. I had gotten used to nightmares, and as a result, I kept my phone close by at all times. But tonight, it was plugged in on the floor at the foot of my bed, and in my panic, I couldn't reach it. To deal with my constant night terrors, my grandmother had sewn little loops into my blanket. The idea was, if I could grab them, I would know I was in the real world. I reached down with trembling hands, feeling those loops beneath my feet. The sensation felt so real, so cold. I pinched myself, bit my skin. Nothing would wake me from this nightmare. I crawled under the covers, hoping to escape, but I couldn't sleep. I peeked out, and that shadow was still there. Still sitting, staring at me. I was paralyzed by fear, tears already streaming down my face. Why was he still there? I whispered a prayer, my mind racing. I even cried out for my grandmother, but there was no answer. My father used to joke that if something ever haunted you, you should curse at it, and I did, whispering curses under my breath, the fear still choking me. The light outside started to change. The sun was about to rise, and the shadow should have been washed away by the light. But it didn't. It stayed. And then I made a choice. With all my fear, all my panic, I gathered the last of my courage. I leapt out of bed, cursing loudly, ready to face whatever it was. And in that instant, the silhouette vanished, just evaporated like smoke. The dog stopped barking. Everything became silent. I could hear the birds singing outside, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and sunlight streamed through the window, right to where that thing had been sitting. It was bright and warm, peaceful. I collapsed back into bed, sobbing, not sure why, but the terror had left me. Then, my grandmother came into the room and said, "I think you were calling me." I had been, but it was hours ago. When she stepped into the room, I felt calm. The fear was gone. I looked around the spot where the shadow had been, and there was nothing there, just a small ottoman. I told my grandmother what had happened. She listened, then said something that made my blood run cold. My son, your uncle, was tormented the same way, and after, he became a shaman. This story didn't happen to me, but to my mom and older sister. It was the 90s, and after my mom's first failed marriage, she was left alone with a small child. With very little money, she moved into a communal apartment. In the neighboring room lived an elderly woman, quiet and kind, who liked to sit by her window and watch the street. Soon, the woman fell ill and began to die. It was a slow, painful death. Her adult daughter came to care for her, and my mom and sister decided to temporarily stay with friends since the thought of being near the dying woman was too much. After a week, the old woman passed away. That evening, my mom and sister returned to the apartment. As they approached the building, my mom's gaze shifted to the kitchen window. There, standing in the window, was the silhouette of the old woman, watching the street, the woman who had just died. My mom froze, terror gripped her, and she squeezed my sister's hand tightly. Without a word, she turned and ran back to the friend's apartment. Time seemed to slow down for her as she fled. They got back to the apartment, where the friends were shocked, not understanding what had happened. My sister, still a child, was scared but didn't fully understand why her mother was so terrified. After calming down, my mom explained what she had seen. Unsure if they believed her, the friends suggested she visit a priest to bless the apartment and drive away the woman's spirit. The apartment was blessed, and after that, nothing strange happened again. The old woman finally rested in peace. Years later, the apartment became my mom's, as the state granted it to her for being in need. I spent my entire childhood and adolescence there, in the very room where the old woman had passed away. There was always a sense that I wasn't alone, but as an adult, I convinced myself it was just my imagination. But when I asked my mom years later if it really happened, she confirmed everything. And now, I'm not so sure it was just my imagination after all. This happened a couple of years ago. I don't remember exactly if it was summer or spring, but it was around the time when people wake up early for morning prayers, around 4 or 5 a.m. I'm usually a deep sleeper, but that day I was in a light sleep. We lived in a house with 3 rooms on the 2nd floor. My parents' room, my brother's, and mine. And there was a hallway with a staircase. My dad would often pray in the hallway, and sometimes I would wake up when he did. This time, I vaguely heard and felt my dad coming up the stairs. So I was waiting for him to start praying. I was still in that groggy, half-asleep state, just waiting for him to start. But he didn't. Suddenly I heard my door creak open, and I heard a voice. My dad's voice, calling me by my name. But there was something wrong. He asked, "Can I? May I? Is it okay?" It sounded just like my dad's voice, the same tone, but something about it felt off. It wasn't him. The voice kept repeating my name, growing louder, more insistent. And then it started to feel wrong. It became more aggressive, more demanding. I was paralyzed in fear, unable to move or speak, like I was caught in some kind of trance. But in my mind, I started repeating words over and over, trying to fight back. Then I heard the sound of my real dad coming up the stairs, and just like that, the pressure eased. But as the panic lifted, I felt a sharp, cold sensation, like a long, wicked claw running down my back from top to bottom. And then, everything vanished. I shot up in a panic, threw open the door, and saw my dad in the hallway already praying. I breathed a sigh of relief, closed the door, and went back to sleep. But after that night, things changed. I began seeing strange figures, shadows that lingered just outside my sight. I couldn't relax if there were open doors or empty spaces around me. I felt like something was watching me, waiting. And sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'd see movement. It all stopped eventually, but every now and then, I'd catch a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision. It took me a while to realize, was that thing in my dad's voice asking for permission to enter? Was it trying to take something from me? The memory still haunts me, and sometimes the shadows still linger. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Have a similar experience? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Take care and see you in the next video.